Hello everyone, my name is Nikita and I am from the Bodhi Academy. Today we are going to start with a new chapter from 10th Standard Science textbook, that is chapter number 4, Carbon and Compounds. Okay, so this is a chemistry chapter wherein we are going to study the properties of carbon, the element carbon, and the compound it forms with carbon or with other elements. This element carbon is a very important element because many of the materials which exist on the earth are made up of carbons. The chemicals which we use in our daily life, the materials which we use are made up of carbon. Okay, they are either made up of carbon or the compounds from carbon. Now, what is the atomic number of carbon? Okay, the atomic number of carbon is 6. Atomic number means the number of electrons present in the atom of the carbon. They are 6. So the electronic configuration of carbon becomes 2 and 4. Okay, means 2 electrons are present in the K shell and 4 electrons are present in the L shell. Now, what will be the valency of carbon? What do you mean by valency? Valency is the number of electrons which you will remove from the outer shell, or you will take the electrons so that you get a completely filled external shell, to get a completely filled orbit. So the valency of this is the valency now for the last shell contains 4 electrons in the last shell. To attain a completely filled shell, to attain a completely filled shell, I will need more 4 electrons over here. So valency of the carbon is 4. Okay, so the valency is 4 in a sense. You will either need 4 electrons to be added in the shell, or you can remove this 4 electrons so that the K shell becomes the last completely filled shell. Okay, so the valency is 4. So now what you will do, will you remove 4 electrons or will you add 4 electrons so that you get a completely filled outer shell? That is a question. So this is a element, that is carbon atom, is a very unique carbon atom, because in this atom of carbon you can either add 4 electrons or either you can remove 4 electrons. But what are the consequences in both the cases? Okay, so in the first case, if you are adding 4 electrons, then the carbon becomes 4C4 minus anion. Okay, it becomes a negatively charged atom. It becomes 4C4 minus anion because you are adding 4 electrons. Now we know that the atomic number is 6, means the number of protons present in the nucleus are also 6. Okay, so the protons, now I have added 4 electrons, so the total number of electrons in the carbon is 10. Electrons are 10 in number, and we know that the protons in the nucleus are 6. Okay, so nucleus contains 6 protons and the entire atom now contains 10 electrons. So in this case, when you make the carbon C4 minus anion, this makes the carbon atom unstable, because it is difficult for the nucleus carrying 6 protons to carry the 10 electrons. It becomes difficult for the nucleus of the carbon atom carrying 6 protons to carry 10 electrons. Okay, so this is not inevitable. Okay, this is not evitable. You can't add 4 electrons. So the second option is removing 4 electrons. Okay, removing 4 electrons, this will convert the carbon into C4 plus cation. Okay, that will gain the 4 plus charge. In this case, when you remove the 4 electrons, the number of electrons left in the atom will be just 2, and the protons are carrying 6. The nucleus is carrying 6 protons. Okay, so in this case what happens is that it requires a large amount of energy to remove the 4 electrons. Okay, when the atom with 6 nucleus removes the 4 electrons, this loses a large amount of energy. So this process is also not constrainable. Okay, we can't remove 4 electrons because this leads to a loss of energy. So in this case, the carbon, when it can't add 4 electrons and when it can't remove 4 electrons, but it has 4 electrons in its outer shell, so what the carbon does is that it shares its 4 electrons. The carbon shares its 4 electrons and it forms bonds or covalent bonds with atoms of carbon or with atoms of other elements, or you can say that with atoms of other monovalent elements. Means monovalent means which will have the valency as 1. So they will take up the 4 electrons one by one from the carbon. They will share the electrons from the with carbon. Okay, so what carbon does with its 4 electrons is that carbon shares its 4 electrons. Okay, so not only carbon, but there are many other elements, okay, which do this, which are present, mostly those present as diatomic elements. For example, the very known example is hydrogen. The symbol for hydrogen is actually H, but it always exists as 2 hydrogens. It always exists as diatomic molecule because the atomic number of hydrogen is 1, the electronic configuration is 1, and the valency, that is the number of electrons required to completely fill the outer shell, is 1. It requires 1 electron, or it can either remove electron. In this case, the hydrogen shares its electron. So how is this done? So this is the last shell of the carbon. Okay, this contains 1 electron. Now the next hydrogen, it also will share its 1 electron. So there are 2 electrons now both. So this hydrogen has this both electrons and this hydrogen has this both electrons because they have shared electrons. So this part represents the sharing of the electrons. There is only 1 pair of electron over here. So there is only 1 bond between the 2 hydrogen atoms. Okay. Next example is very famous, is oxygen, which is present always as diatomic molecule. The electronic configuration of oxygen, the atomic number is actually 8. So electronic configuration becomes 2 and 6, and the valency is 2. You require 2 electrons to fill the shell. Okay, so we will represent the last shell now. Oxygen. Okay, you can see that there are 2 pairs of electrons over here for oxygen. So there are 2 bonds shared between oxygen. Okay, so in the last shell there are 6 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the valency is 2. So it shares its 2 electrons. Okay, so we write oxygen as O2 always, and there are 2 pairs of electrons they share. So the bond between the two oxygen is double bond. Okay, same way we will do a hydrocarbon now. Hydrocarbon means the compounds which contain carbon and hydrogen. Okay, C and H. So the very known example is methane. The formula of methane is CH4. Okay. Now we know that the valency of carbon is 4 and the valency of hydrogen is 1. Okay, and the last shell of carbon contains 4. So we will now represent the last shell in this diagram. So this is my atom carbon. I will represent this 4 electrons of carbon. Okay, and now there are 4 electrons carbon can share, and one hydrogen requires only 1 electron to attain a valence shell. Okay, so in this case what will happen is that you can take 4 hydrogens over here which will share 4 electrons of carbon. So you cannot just take 1 hydrogen, but you can take 4 hydrogens over here to satisfy the valency. Hydrogen with its 1 electron, next hydrogen with its next electron, third hydrogen with its another electron, okay. So now there is 1 carbon and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons. So in this way you can represent the formula in the form of this electron dot structures. Okay, the dot represents the electrons of hydrogen and the crosses represent the electrons of carbon. So the compound here is CH4. So these are some of the examples of how the elements shares the atom of that element shares its valence electrons with monovalent compounds. Okay, the monovalent elements. So these are some of the examples. Now, so you can see that the carbon element is a very unique element. Okay, because it can share its electrons and form compounds with other carbon, as well as it can form compounds with other elements. Okay, so because of this it is called as a unique element, and mainly because of its 2 properties. Okay, one property is catenation. Catenation is the ability of the carbon to form bonds with other elements of other atoms of other elements, or forming the bonds with carbon itself. So it can form bond with carbon, then carbon oxygen, carbon hydrogen, carbon nitrogen. Okay, so it can form bonds with other elements. This property of carbon is known as catenation. Then second property is tetravalency. Now why it can form bonds? Because the valency of carbon is 4. 4 is for tetra. Okay, because of this it can form bonds with other elements. So the 2 properties of carbon are catenation and tetravalencies. Now depending upon the number of bonds it forms with other elements, okay, they are divided into 2 types of compounds: saturated and unsaturated. Okay, so saturated compounds are those which form single bond between the atoms. Okay, so these are single bonded compounds Okay, and unsaturated are the ones which form double or triple bond. Okay, so the unique ability of the carbon to form bonds with other elements or bonds with carbon is called as catenation. Under that you have two types of compounds. It can form saturated when it forms a single bond, and unsaturated when it forms double or triple bond. Okay, second is tetravalency, that is the valency of carbon is 4, so it has 4 electrons which can share, so it can share it with 4 other monovalent compounds. Okay, so this was about the unique. So if the question asked is why is carbon called a unique element, it is because of its two properties, catenation and tetravalence. Then you have to explain what is catenation and what is tetravalency. Okay, so in the next video we will be studying what is the how the bonds are formed and the different types of names given to different compounds when there are different bonds and when there are different features. Okay, so in the next video we will be doing the formation of bonds and the nomenclature of each compound. Okay, so thank you for watching my video. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel.